All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the program. You've joined Children of the Sun, broadcasting live every Friday afternoon, 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Atlantic Standard, because we're broadcasting from beautiful St. Croix in the turquoise waters of the Caribbean. So I want to welcome everybody to the program. Welcome everyone to the weekend. Hope you get out and have a great weekend this weekend. And I hope we'll be able to send you off with an excellent 2 hours of broadcasting dedicated to positive energy from a fifth dimensional perspective here on WSTX AM 970. And also, you can pick us up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn Radio. We're all over the place. My guest today is Andrew Kirschbaum. After experiencing a full-blown kundalini awakening at age 24 and witnessing the diamond body of light at age 27, Andrew Kirschbaum underwent a non-dual shift in perspective, aka awakening or enlightenment, 5 months later on Father's Day 2017 at age 27. This shift in perception revealed the individual self to be a fabrication, free will and all separation to be illusory, and that suffering and therefore seeking had ended, along with the personal sense of I. So Andrew Kirschbaum, welcome to Children of the Sun.
Hello, good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. All right, well, it sounds like you had three enlightenment experiences. Kundalini
Actually,
the diamond body of light, and then the final non-shift. So could you tell us, tell us a little bit about each of those and how they came about and why, like after the Kundalini one, you eventually said, well, I've got further to go. Go further.
yeah, so when I was about 8 years old, I think that's about the average age for what I call the unawakening, when the ego mind develops enough to cross the threshold where it begins suffering and feeling separate. I think most people would probably label that as depression, but really it's the ego mind is a felt sense of separation. So when I was 8 years old, that feeling of seeking began, where I left the natural state. And I was verbose enough even then to be able to verbally articulate why I felt the way I felt. I was 8 years old and I told my mother I was feeling depressed. And she said, sweetie, what do you mean you're feeling depressed? You're 8 years old. What are you feeling? And I said, I feel as though I'm separate from the rest of the universe. And it's the loneliest feeling ever. And I began to cry. And that's the feeling of seeking. That's the feeling of separation that is the ego mind, which is ultimately a delusion, as we know. So as time went on, I got into comparative world religion and started questioning pretty much everything. And I would read through all the different religions, and I remember I eventually got to Buddhism, and I was trying to make my own system to nail it all down and share it with the world based on my intuition and what I know. And I would look at Buddhism and I say yes, 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 and then I get to no self, on Atman, no, and I say, oh, I can't be right. You know, the seeker is always hesitant to look at no self. They're hesitant to look at awareness itself. Then when I was about 16, I had what I would call a kundalini activation. So not a full-blown kundalini awakening. It just kind of came online. And
Okay.
at that point in my life, I had dark brown solid eye color that dramatically changed almost overnight to kind of a vibrant hazel of every color. And I
Hmm.
noticed kind of psychic activity. So noticed a lot of what we'd call siddhis, telepathy, things of that nature. Electronic objects acting different based on my level of awareness, things like that. And I would give psychic readings and do channeling and things like that at that age.
How old were
Trance
you
work,
then?
self-hypnosis, metacognition.
How old were
I
you
was
then?
16 when
Okay.
that chunk of time culminated when I was 16. So about 12 to 16, there was that process going on. When I was 16, I noticed Kundalini activity, and again, it wasn't a full-blown awakening of any kind. It was just kind of subtly came online more. I call it subtle, but most people it would be probably mind blowing because they're experiencing telepathy and things like that, non local energy transfer.
Right.
And by the time I was in college as a freshman, I was a street magician as well as a psychic and a spiritualist. So I would do magic tricks and I would specify. I would say, "This is an illusion. This is me deceiving you using sleight of hand for fun," you know. And then I do some psychic experimentation. I say, "Listen," I tell people I do both. I make it very clear what I'm about to do next is not a trick, but it kind of was a parlor trick in a sense that I would project energy. I would have someone hold out their hand and close their eyes, and then I would tell somebody else which finger I was going to pick, and I would direct my attention, and they would feel it in their fingertip, for example. So it was a demonstrable, provable form of energy transfer using awareness. And then by the time I was 24, I had a spontaneous, full blown kundalini awakening where I entered into an astral samadhi with multi-dimensional, kind of what we were talking about in this podcast, so kind of a 5D, I call it astral vision, where you enter into a high level of awareness and bliss, essentially, is what triggers it. It was just kind of a runaway cascade of events where bliss fell into itself. And it was like meeting God and experiencing a back and forth of question and answer that was direct and immediate and out of time. And that was beyond the crown even. And then 3 years later, I had that diamond body of light experience, which was at least a 5 dimensional shape of light, of geometrical light at some point where I
Is that
saw
like a
that and I said,
Merkaba?
"Oh, that's me." Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. So a lot of people would talk about it as a Merkaba, which in Egyptian means light spirit body. In Hebrew, it means chariot of ascension. It was either a very fast spinning star tetrahedron or a different shape because it was spinning so fast it might have changed my perception of it. But what I saw was a dodecagonal trapezohedron, but it could have been star tetrahedron just spinning so fast it kind of created that shape as an optical illusion as well. And then 5 months after that, I experienced awakening proper, and that was 5 years ago. And about a year ago, I had an additional energetic shift of some kind that was kind of like a kundalini based thing, but also it was kind of like a full circle awakening where the personal was re-included, attachment and excitement was re-included. Um, so in Zen, we talk about that as third mountain. First, there are no there's mountains, then there are no mountains, then there are mountains again. So this is the mountains again that I was so confident didn't exist even. Upon awakening, I was kind of arrogant in that I thought, it's seen there are no mountains, there's no ego, there's no personal, so it'll never come back because it's realized. And it's not that the back step is taken, it's just kind of like the charts you see in Zen where it keeps going. Who knows how many mountains there really are?
so I'd like to back up a bit to the Merkaba experience, the
Mhm.
star body of light, like what you were doing
Yeah,
and how it
sure.
appeared. You were your eyes open or closed, you were
Right, right.
meditating. Yeah. Let's
So I
get
was walking around my apartment one day and I just started kind of spontaneously falling into bliss, and that's what usually triggers experiences of this caliber in my personal experience or impersonal, however you want to look at it. But I was walking around my apartment, I was just getting more and more blissed out spontaneously, and then I'm not a guy that has a tremendous amount of discipline or willpower and meditates formally for hours a day at this point, and but something told me go sit in formal seated meditative posture. And it was out of the blue, like a calling to go do that. I thought that's out of the blue. It's not average or normal, but I'm going to listen to it. So I went and I sat on my bed in full lotus position. I had kind of zazen hands for the mudra, sucked in the perineum, the four bandhas. There's four, not three. So I suck in the perineum, I suck in the navel, I put my chin to my chest. And then something told me to go into Kachari Mudra, the skywalking seal, which is where you put your tongue, believe it or not, above the roof of your mouth into the nasopharynx cavity. And so I
over the
did that.
palate.
Yes, over the soft palate, above the soft palate. As strange as that may sound to our audience, or some of the
Mm.
audience. And as soon as I did that, and I had done that technique before many times over the course of about 10 years, but never had a full blown visionary experience from it. I think it helped catalyze, doing that practice, I think helped catalyze the initial Kundalini awakening on some level. So I go into these postures and I was seated straight up, and then I suddenly was granted astral vision or fifth dimensional vision, however you want to explain it. And it was above my head, spinning a shape of white light. And instantly, without any thoughts occurring, there was a recognition, kind of like when you look in a mirror and you go, yeah, that's me, in a way, right? And I was a seeker at the time, so there's still some shred of identification tethered, right? But I see that shape and immediately, oh, that's me. So it's kind of like
So
the
that was
energy
like your
signature.
energy body, or like your diamond body of
Yeah,
light, or like
right.
you recognized that it was you. Like you just
It was
immediately
me
just like,
even
oh, that's me.
more. Yeah, even more than if you looked in the mirror and said, yeah, that's me. Like, oh, that's me.
All right. Cool.
There's a lot of bliss in that and it's spinning. And when I looked up through it, it almost gave me the impression of like a clock spinning backwards, as if to say, righty tighty, lefty loosey, even metaphysically. So the clockwise is the condensing down into form, counterclockwise is the expanding upward. And it's almost when you expand upward, the Kundalini did that too, and it rose up when I was 24. It was like it was like a golden double helix
Okay.
that went counterclockwise as it went up and kind of plugged in to where the pituitary and the pineal gland are, almost like an outlet. And then I had an out of body bilocative astral experience. But in this experience, it was similar in that I had that astral visionary sensory perception. And I got the impression that this thing could do anything, that like we're all gods on that level. And yet it still has certain parameters, a certain amount of individuality or uniqueness. And I saw that light and realized that this is basically creating this experience I'm having, and that I'm that at the same time that I'm this, even though it's out of time. So the way I explain that is I say, in the same way that it's not weird or strange or complex that I have a head, a hand, and a foot all at the same time, I'm
Mm,
also this fifth dimensional shape of light in the in between realm. And then it
and
seemed like there was something in the middle of it too. It looked like clear, crystalline spinning, really bright white light, spinning very fast, almost a subtle hum to it on a certain level above the head. And some people would call this the soul star chakra, things like that. But I also saw like what looked like a swimming knot of gold together in a ball, at the very center of the shape. And yet it was almost like it was hiding the very core of this shape from my awareness. Like it didn't want me to see the inner core of the shape. So some aspect of that was hidden. And then 5 months later, awakening proper struck.
and where were you when that happened?
I was walking around a relative's property, and it was a beautiful day. It was Father's Day, so the family had gotten together, and I was walking around, and everything was just suspiciously perfect. It was like the wind was just right, the sunlight was just right, the angle of the sun was just right, the natural beauty was off the charts. Everything was just right to such a degree that it was almost suspicious.
Mm,
It was almost too perfect. And by the time that registered, it was already in effect, where it felt like this thick blanket of a static energy, almost like an infinite blanket as far as you could see in every direction, but somehow bound to the wind, kind of descended upon me. The static and the wind as a big, thick sheet, drenched, kind of covered me and the landscape as far as I could see. And the way the mind interpreted it at that time was that this is being given the Buddha's robes. It's like, I
right.
remember, you know, um, there was a lot to that as well. So I could for the first time, I could kind of see this golden life force energy in the plants and the trees and things like that. When I talk about that, a lot of people say, well, that's not the shift we're talking about. That's a mystical experience that you're misinterpreting. It's like, well, it was all there at once. So it was like multiple experiences imbued in through each other, different layers being seen. I could see the energy in the trees and the plants. And at one point, I looked at a tree and I saw this golden fountain of energy pouring through the tree. And I thought, oh my God, there's a lot of energy in trees. A lot of people kind of space out, drop in emptiness, and they find they're facing a tree when they do that. Sometimes when they're outside. My first thought was the Buddha. he put his spine up against a tree and experienced awakening. I thought, sure he did. I could see the energy pouring through. There's a tremendous amount of energy there. I could see how that would catalyze him in that story, for example.
Yeah, yeah. We usually just think about him as sitting under the tree.
Yeah, but really,
But yeah,
if you put
if he put his spine against
back
the
against
trunk
the
of the
fountain of
tree,
energy,
good
yeah.
point. And so, what was it like then that shift into ultimate awakening and the like the loss of the personal I, the loss of identity? Explain about that to people.
There's an utterly unfazed aspect to it, and it's the feeling of eternity. So the fear of death uh, goes away or is greatly diminished. I remember as a seeker, I was probably way more afraid of the concept of death or annihilation or non-existence than the average person. And so
Mm.
for me, it was a very intense existential conundrum that had to be solved, and
Because you
that
were a
didn't
seeker,
sit well with me.
or that because you were a seeker, you were more afraid of death, or you were a seeker because you were more afraid of death than the average person, or like just kind of both.
That I think that feeling of separation is stronger in those that do awaken. And so I think they feel that much deeper, that sense of isolation, that sense of suffering. The world bites them harder. And it's not necessarily just the external circumstances, it's just the energy itself of seeking, of suffering, of separation. And so to finally not have that feeling, it was as if instantly 90% of all suffering and seeking went away forever. 90% of mental illness, 90% of reactivity, 90% of the kind of personal drama that loops itself. That's not to say everything's perfect after awakening, it just goes a long way. The way I put it is it's like the edge is permanently taken off, as where we had been chasing experiences or substances or relationships or whatever it is to get that feeling of unity. Now that it's present, most of that just kind of falls away. And so it happens instantly. That's why, the suddenness of it is stressed because it's all of a sudden. I mean, there's a gradual process before and after, but the awakening itself is timeless, and so it's instant. And there's a radical shift in the energy. So I would define enlightenment as an energetic shift in the feeling tone that flavors the rest of the lifetime.
And so then you're talking about like in the last year or so, you've had kind of it sounds that just it people could take that as like going back, like bringing back in the personal stuff, but it sounds more like you're
Right,
bringing it down. It's
exactly.
like you're embodying it. You can't just like
Right, exactly.
so tell us about that.
Yeah, so the way I map this out is something similar to Zen. I call it first mountain, second mountain, third mountain. So first mountain is the seeker trying to overcome that feeling. Second mountain is also called no mountain, which is the newly awakened honeymoon phase, if you will, or even sometimes it lasts even years, right? So when you're in Zen tradition, for example, if you wake up, they make you wait 10 years before they qualify you as a teacher because they want to make sure that this additional shift has taken place and been integrated, where the return of the personal happens, but not in a way where you're taking a back step. I know a lot of people on First Mountain or even on Second Mountain hearing this are probably saying, oh, he got it and he lost it. Oh, that's not how it works. That never comes back again. And so to them on Second Mountain, Third Mountain looks identical to First Mountain. So it's
Okay.
hard for them to diagnose where someone's at, for example, because it looks like a backstep to them because they think they've achieved the final realization. But it's not the final realization, it's just the beginning. So in Buddhism, we would say that stream entry, what we would call the non-dual shift in perspective, is the end of the lesser journey, but the beginning of the greater journey. I know a lot of people are skeptical that it keeps going, but it does. And so for example, as a seeker on First Mountain, I was overly excitable and passionate and overly attached to things. And then on Second Mountain, it was almost like you're a million miles away, utterly detached, utterly unfazed. It would be hard to bring yourself into excitement, for example. But then in Third Mountain, ironically, you get access again to everything the seeker and the sage both have. So they're no longer two separate worlds. Even in that sense, it keeps merging and including itself as you go. So there's both the impersonal and the personal present. There's unattached and attached, suffering and unsuffering, etc. Probably
Yeah,
sounds
but
crazy to a lot of people.
it doesn't sound crazy at all because it's like that suffering ends, but along with it can come a kind of juiceless existence.
Exactly, kind of a
And
hollow husk. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and so you
Gray blob.
reincorporate the human element, but now you're not it's like in a different way.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also it's sort of like some of the really deep stuff gets purified, but at the same time,
Mhm.
how you act in the world is uh, it's like you're not um a robotic slave
Right.
to it, just sort of like
Totally. So another metaphor I use is it's kind of like a video game. So in First Mountain, the seeker is playing a video game. They're totally into it. They're trying really hard. They're investing everything they have into it, and they don't realize that it's ultimately not what it seems to be. So it's not real or unreal. It's just not what it appears to be.
okay,
It's not a physical world and yada yada. So then on Second Mountain, it's like you finally realize, oh, I've been playing a video game. I got sucked into this character. I was taking things way too seriously. This is supposed to be for entertainment. You set the controller down. You don't even play the game. You're utterly non-participatory. But then Third Mountain, when this additional shift happens, you know full well you're not in the video game ever. You know full well it's not a real world, but you also know the purpose of it is to play. And so you pick up the controller again, and this time you're all the way in the game again, participating, but you know what's going on. You know it's just a game. Instead of taking it too seriously, you're enjoying it. So there's full participation now in the dream. And there's a Jesus quote that people only hear half of, and Third Mountain is speaking the other half. He said, I am in the world, but not of the world. And they always focus on, right, he's not of the world. But what they miss is that he's in the world again.
right.
Again, he's back already. And here I am,
Yeah, I talked about
type
how
of thing.
he knew that he went around healing people, even though he knew the person and the situation and the disease were none of them were real, but he still healed them anyway.
Yeah,
So
right.
in the world as well as not of it. And
And he was
um,
participating, exactly.
I like the video game metaphor.
Yeah, this world is essentially virtual. This is a form of
Is that
play.
what it means to be a bodhisattva? To come back into the world like that?
As far as the Bodhisattva Arhat distinction, I think that's a spontaneous course of events. In other words, upon awakening, it's realized there ultimately is no choice. Things are just happening. So it's not like the newly awakened sage or Buddha decides whether to be an Arhat or a Bodhisattva. I would say I go back and forth between those energies within a given day, even. So to say somebody chooses to inhabit the Bodhisattva or the Arhat vibe, in my experience, that's not 100% accurate. It seems more like things just happen and the energies kind of go back and forth, you know. Um,
Well,
so there
I
is
think
this, you
it's
know,
about, the bodhisattva promises not to enter nirvana until everyone is liberated. And that theoretically every sentient being, people, animals, insects. So theoretically, that could take hundreds of millions of years, and he's just gonna, but you're embodying, you're coming back into this plane, bringing the enlightened state with you, and running all of the human stuff through that in order to liberate. As part of the function of liberating all beings. But at the same time, the Buddha said, I am liberated, and so are all beings because
right.
within as soon since everyone is in your perception and a projection of your own consciousness, as soon as you become enlightened, everyone does become enlightened. So it's sort of like
There's
you
or
can't
they or it's
you
realized they all already are living
yeah
Buddhas. Yeah, so
so
there's two levels to that. So the first level is the relative. So if there was an advanced Buddhist practitioner operating on the relative level of frequency of awareness, they would say something like, may all beings be free. If you find the Buddha, kill him on the road. If you speak to a living Buddha, they are more likely to speak from the absolute and say something like, all dream beings are free. I am the Buddha. So are you. You know, it's like
Right.
nothing needs to be done. It's just that that's what's realized. So in
Yeah.
Dzogchen, for example, the highest teaching of Buddhism, the non-dual highest ninth vehicle of Buddhism, which includes all other teachings, um, the highest compassion is to realize that yes, these are just dream beings, and you're still going to be compassionate to them, even though you know what they are. And so Dzogchen, I forgot where I was going with the Dzogchen thing.
Well, yeah, that's okay. So that's how I'm looking at it. It's like the the bodhisattva cannot fail.
Yeah, there's no mistake.
You vow to stay, to not enter nirvana until all beings are liberated. But the moment you become liberated, all beings also become liberated. They
Right,
don't
exactly.
know
So all
that.
beings already are in
So that's how you go back
nirvana.
and forth
Exactly.
from
So it's a way of
arhat to
speaking. Exactly.
bodhisattva. Yeah. So, and which like that's why you feel like you go back and forth between arhat and bodhisattva, because if the people around you don't know they're already realized, and you're working at it from that perspective, then you're going to be the bodhisattva for that day. And then if the people around
Right.
you are making more are beginning to realize, then you could be arhat for that day. And it just goes back and forth because it's all one thing. We're all
Yeah,
one.
and it's also a way of responding, right? So like if you see let's say you have five people, like when I first woke up, I could see the machinations at play. Like I could see the emptiness in people, and yet there were these drama patterns that were trying to rope you in and get you to react. Come
Yeah.
on, participate in the drama with us. It's desperate to get the newly awakened perspective to come back into the drama,
Right.
and it won't. And so they're
Right.
almost desperate and frenzied to get you to react. And in that sense, if you're just cool, calm, and collected, and detached, and not letting it bother you, you also know you can't speak to that layer of awareness. That's the arhat vibe. But then to go out of your way, not even to go out of your way, just to meet it where it is, where they are, and to offer yourself as an interface to clarity, to see what they might get out of it to catalyze their awakening without expectations, then that would be the bodhisattva vibe. And there is this automatic, unconditional love, obviously, that
Right.
comes from the awakened experience as well.
Right. The compassion happens automatically. There's no,
Right.
there's you, yeah, it just happens automatically. I like to talk. I think of it as you're driving in the desert and there's a mirage. It looks like a lake is on the road, but you know it's not a lake. You know it's a mirage. But your ego is riding shotgun, passenger seat, front seat, and reaching behind and pulling out some buckets and handing you a bucket and saying, "We better get to bailing. We're going to be here a while."
We
And
gotta
yeah,
do something. There's a problem with
yeah.
water. There isn't really. Yeah, exactly.
And so once you know it's a lake, I mean, it's a mirage, once you know the snake is a coiled up rope, you can't get drawn into it anymore.
Right. And that's something else I bring up because I used to harp on the fact that this awakening is sudden more so than it's gradual. Like I can see both sides of it, obviously. I can see how it's both, but I also see how there's certain roadblocks for the seeker's mentality to actually find this thing, Like if they think awakening is more rare than it really is, that will
That's a
slow them
world, yeah.
down. If they think that it's gradual rather than sudden, that will slow them down because they'll already think they're halfway there or something, which is half true. But the way I explain realization always being sudden is I would say, you've never had a realization ever in your life about anything that wasn't sudden. So if you looked at a rope hanging from a tree and you thought it was a snake for 10 years, and every day you went outside for a cigarette at night and you only were out there at night, you never saw it in the daylight, you thought, oh, there's that snake again. You have this catalog. You've been journaling about this snake for 10 years. You became an expert on all the local species of snake. Okay, it grew 1 inch this week. I think it's this kind of snake now. And then suddenly, not gradually, suddenly, you go, oh, that's not a snake at all. That's a rope. There's no gradual process from snake to rope. It's in an instant. And so is awakening. Is there a gradual process to awakening and beyond awakening? Sure, but awakening itself is sudden. So in Zen, they would say, first of all, Zen means sudden awakening, but they would say this is a special transmission found outside of the scriptures. So in other words, this is an energetic, subtle, timeless transmission that reveals the infinite.
Hmm. Did you practice Zen with like a Zen master?
No, no, I didn't really practice anything too hardcore. It was just kind of like you can see how these philosophies are pointing to something subtle that requires an expanded awareness to detect. And so this is all a kind of invitation into the detection of subtlety toward expanded awareness. So this is related to the spontaneous transferring of non-locally of life force energy and of expanded awareness and bliss. So awareness, bliss, and energy are all the same thing essentially. And that's what's required. That's the key to it all, to catalyze to awakening and beyond it. Every stage of it is catalyzed by bliss, awareness, and or energy. Because if you increase one of those things, you're going to increase the others. So if I, do a Shakti type transmission, someone's going to become more aware and blissed out suddenly. And if you get blissed out by something, you can be more aware and energized. So the plight of the seeker, the quote of the seeker is, I'm tired. And I'm tired means I don't have enough life force energy, which makes it harder to manage my moods, makes it harder to have clear perception, but it also implies I'm sick and tired of suffering, and I don't want to be in this mode anymore, which subtly implies a form of suicide as a desperate attempt to transcend the suffering. Obviously, that's not required to end suffering. Obviously, that's not the answer to end suffering, because it can end in this lifetime to a greater extent. And so nirvana is right here in the awakened experience. The world itself is nirvana. And for the seeker, the same world is seen upside down as samsara. And so right view is when samsara, seeing the world upside down, you're suddenly seeing the world right side up. And then one of the first thoughts that arises in the mind is usually, oh, the world really is perfect, like all those sages were trying to say, and I was fighting. Now I can see it. So right view is instantly suddenly in place. And then all the others are just automatically there because of that. So in that sense, it is very sudden. You have a radical shift in how you perceive everything and how you feel about it. More importantly, it's not that we know something the seeker doesn't know necessarily. It's just the flavor of being is innately joyous, and the heavy burden is the edge is taken off. We could say at very least the edge is taken off, so it makes it easier.
So I mean, it's not like things don't go wrong, but
Right.
like
There's
if you,
still all kinds of turmoil in a sage's life, even if somebody was in the fully enlightened perspective, if you will, whatever mountain you want to call that. Because again, I said 90% of everything vanishes upon awakening. So there's only
so
10%
suffering,
difference. Yeah.
90%
Yeah,
of
of
suffering.
trauma, reactivity, selfing, delusion, mental illness, things like that. So the difference between a freshly awakened stream entrant baby Buddha, if you will, someone who just woke up, and a fully enlightened master is 10%. So not a huge deal, but a deal. And even people who have cleared out the energy body 100% still have turmoil in their lives. It's just a little easier to deal with.
By turmoil, you mean like just um, things go wrong. You get a flat tire in the parking lot. Is that what you would?
Yeah, in interpersonal relating or different types of relationship struggles or these things happen, right? Like if you're in the awakened state and you're seeing with a certain clarity, it doesn't mean the entire world is all of a sudden. So still 99.9% of adult humans are still in the seeking energy. And to some extent that kind of runs the world, not in a bad way. It's just how the illusion props itself up so that we can all experience this miracle. Because this is what this appearance really is a mind-blowing miracle. The fact that we've realized what we've realized about the ultimate nature of reality, and it still appears as this. There's an infinite gratitude here, present, even though it's realized there's only one being present. So it's nice to have conversations, for example, to still be convinced on some level that it feels like there's two of us here right now, and there's an audience right now. To me, that's miraculous. That's beautiful.
And amazing.
Yeah. The sage finds itself amazed that it can even be amazed, surprised that it can even be surprised, especially when these additional layers take place, because none of them are ever expected.
Well, I know you don't like to serve the first ping pong, and so I have a radio show, so I have to. I like take steps and write questions now, and so let me ask you: is there free will? And if there isn't, is it because people are obeying their conditioning, or is it because this is all a dream and the dream script is just going to be followed and you're going to do what the dream script says?
As Wim Hof once said, it's all there. So I'll break it down into layers here. So, as a seeker, if somebody were to ask me that question, like many advanced seekers, they'd probably respond in a similar way, and they would say that they feel as though 95% of everything is just programmed by conditioning, but they have access to the metacognitive domain through deep trance and meditative samadhi, where they can reprogram themselves or have some shred of free will, say between 1 and 5% of the time, where they enter into a higher awareness and can transcend. That's what the advanced seeker in me would have said. Upon awakening, it seemed very obvious this is all 100% scripted, and that there's absolutely no free will. And yet, after much reflection, um, you might say something like, there's one doer, there's one chooser. So, in a sense, you are bound by your own perfection. You drag around these golden chains that sparkle so bright. In other words, our limitations are self imposed for a reason in order for us to have this experience, which is an enjoyment of our limitless nature through the lens of limitation. So it depends on how you look at it. Because we're all talking about different layers of experience. So ultimately, there is no character. And therefore, that character, that separate character, isn't choosing, isn't aware, isn't even experiencing. So that which is aware, that one being that is aware, that's seeing out of my eyes and your eyes and all the eyes, you could argue that one supreme being has free will. And you could also argue that you, the character, are not separate from that supreme being either. And so you might say something similar to what Bentino Massaro said when he said, your will is God's will. Your desire is God's desire. Because there's only one I am. And I know the second mountain, they would want to reject that outright and say there is no I am. I understand where it's coming from, but there are many layers to this, and there is a being. It's just not a physical being, and it expresses itself infinitely through us, as this dream. This dream is all being uh, infinitely attended to via infinite attentional awareness. So it's an infinitely high resolution daydream of the one awareness. And does that one awareness have free will? Yes and no, because it's bound by its own perfection. It doesn't have the ability to make a mistake, and so neither do we. So there's a sigh of relief when a seeker hears the non-dual message that there is no free will. In other words, you've never made a mistake. There's ultimately nothing to regret, nothing can ever go wrong. And yet there's also the gratitude that there seems to be free will. And a lot of people that newly awaken kind of get stuck where they just sit around and nothing gets done because they think, well, there's no doer. And that can be disempowering as well. And so the additional understanding over time is that it's nice that there seems to be choice, even though it's known and realized there isn't. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, I'd say, with
Hmm.
that eventually.
I like that. Yeah. It's sort of like they're realizing if everything is a dream, who's the dreamer?
Yeah, and that's how I used to put it as a seeker. People would say, I would talk about the higher self when I was a seeker, and I'd say, who is it you think is creating your dreams at night that you inhabit and experience? Who's creating that? If you're the one that experiences and inhabits the dream with a certain set of memory and understanding, and yet there's this higher functioning that's creating the dream that knows more than the conscious mind in that experience, what is that? So yeah, you are the dreamer as God, and you are the dreamt as this character, and yet somehow they're not two, they're not separate, they're both valid. So saying there's no person, it's like, yeah, ultimately, but there's also an infinite gratitude that there seems to be an appearance of people and that it's continuous and that it doesn't just vanish upon awakening. You can still play in that game knowing it's a game. Is there's an infinite gratitude for this all appearing now. As whereas a seeker, I wanted it all to stop. I wanted it to be different. I couldn't appreciate what was right in front of me. Um, being this is plenty now. Being alive is plenty. Even though there's no life or death, there's only this aliveness within a dream. This is all extra. This is all more than plenty. And so I'm satisfied with the appearance now, even though it's got about the same stuff going on before and after awakening externally. It's a similar circumstance, but just to be alive, there's gratitude now.
Mhm.
So it's like the opposite of a suicidal thought.
Well, you don't even have to go to the extreme of suicide. It's just being happy and grateful with life as it is versus being in resistance to everything.
Yeah, like as a seeker, I experienced extreme depression for 19 years, from age 8 to
Mm.
27, the seeking years. And there were moments of uh, wanting it to stop, if you will. And now it's the opposite. And after awakening, it was almost like this is too good to be true. Like, how can you be alive and be in this state? Like, I'm going to get hit by a bus tomorrow or something. That's fine. It was all worth it. I'm going to die in the next 3 days, and that's absolutely fine. Everything's fine. It was worth it to wake up and have 3 days in the awakened state. It's like they always say in things like Zen, they say, I'd rather spend one more day in the awakened state than 100 years in the unawakened state. And so it was that type of feeling, but it was almost like suspiciously too good to be true. Like, how could anyone be that lucky? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna die soon, and that's fine. And then 5 years went by, the body's still around. So you start to think, okay, maybe it'll,
Maybe it'll last. Maybe I'll
yeah, who
still be here
knows?
a while.
Maybe I'll be here 50 years or 3 days. It's all fine.
Well, so do you think that more people are awakening these later years than in the past, or we're just noticing it more?
I think it's possible. It could just be a function of population density. So it's like maybe it's always the same percentage of the world population that wakes up. Maybe it's 1 in 1,000 people that wake up within their lifetime. I'm sure everybody kind of wakes up in the last few seconds of life or something, or sometimes in the last few days of life. Um, but there's different ways to look at this. So on the one hand, you could say perhaps it's just always the same percentage, and there's just way more people in the world in general. So of course, there's more people in that state. If it is that people are waking up more than just the ratio percentage that I suggested, then it would almost certainly be a function of the internet and social connections digitally, I think. Because if you think about it, if you were raised in a small village that didn't have the internet and still behaved as an indigenous village in today's modern world, and you woke up in a village of 66 people, the odds are you're the only one you're ever going to meet in your lifetime that's in that state. So there's nobody you're going to be able to talk to also in that state within your lifetime. But with the internet, I've got 5,000 friends on Facebook and blah, 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 thousands of views here and there. It's like you're going to connect with people, and people are going to find similar experiences that seemed rare, or you couldn't find someone to talk to or compare that experience to. Where now you can type it into Google, the algorithm will link you up with somebody with a similar experience, and you'll be chatting in no time. So I think technology is catalyzing a lot of that. If it is a higher percentage of people waking up, it's hard to say because, like you said, we can't really track it. It could just be like an algorithm thing. So the example I always give is, yes, I have hundreds of sages on my friends list on Facebook, you know, but if I was a master gardener, I'm sure I'd have some of the greatest gardeners on that list instead. I'd be in gardening groups. I'd be talking to master gardeners. I'd be getting gardening tips, and the algorithm would polish that up. So it might just be a function of what we're interested in, what we say, what we experience online. That thank God this algorithm can connect people in that way. So I'm a big fan of technology. I'm a big fan in a positive way of AI and the internet, social media, YouTube. I know a lot of people look down upon it, like they got to get away from it and get back into nature. But I think it's bringing people together that otherwise wouldn't have somebody to talk to on a similar level of awareness to even be able to say what they've experienced and have someone go, yeah, I even know what you're talking about, because like that fifth dimensional shape of light, for example, when I first saw that, it seems like there's far fewer people that see things like that than even awaken. A lot of people have kundalini awakenings. A lot of people have the shift in perspective, but seeing a fifth dimensional shape of light uh, seems to be a little rarer in that particular regard. So it's always refreshing to find people that have had similar experiences because I'm sure even 20 years ago, people felt far more alone, regardless of what state of awareness they were in, regardless of what experiences they'd ever had.
Well, yeah, I think that it kind of the internet and connection through the internet is helpful in that, like if you first begin to have these experiences and enter into the stream, um, you in the past you wouldn't have known what to think of it or what to make of it. Now you can find
Or
somebody
even
who
what it
can,
was.
yeah,
Yeah.
who can, and you can, but I also think that maybe more people are beginning to wake up, because I think that and this is a good segue to my next question, is like, why do you want to wake up? Why should someone want to wake up?
Mm.
Why should
To end
someone want to
suffering.
be free of identification with ego? And so what I'm thinking is that um, as a population, we're basically destroying the planet because of the identification with ego of most
Mm.
people. And so we have
So
more
nature
people
is waking people up. Yeah.
waking up. The
That's a good
consciousness is
point. I
waking
like
us
that.
up.
Because it has to. Yeah,
Right.
because
Because anytime
because
if you
there's
have
only one organism. Yeah.
yeah, well, and if you have, it's a thing in biology where a population will be stressed, and they either everybody the as a whole, the population, that group as a whole, evolves or dies. Um,
Right. I saw the baboon studies about that. I don't know if that's what you're quoting, but I saw a lot of evidence for that. And something else I wanted to bring up of why maybe people are waking up more and more quickly is kind of what Rupert Sheldrake talks about, that the morphogenetic field. So in other words, once something has been done, it's easier to redo it, even if it's not connected to the experience of the other beings. So the minute you break the 4 minute mile, suddenly that year three people break that
Yeah.
record. Or the moment you synthesize a chemical that was almost impossible to synthesize, suddenly 10 scientists easily recreate that in an afternoon. Because now that it's been fully synthesized, now it's easier to so even on a fundamental material level, on a quantum mechanics level, you could argue that the morphogenetic field, like that's why people do rituals. That's why people do the same holiday, the same ritual, the same pilgrimage, the same cultural loop, is that there's an energy behind it. Once it's been done once, it's more easy to access again. So it could be the morphogenetic field, that enough people have woke up that now it's easier to wake up in general for a human being. That could be.
And especially as the knowledge of the fact that more and more people are waking up gets spread through the internet. Like if
Right.
five people wake up last month, but nobody hears about it, even well, I guess the
Right.
more morphogenetic field might kind of be the idea,
Right. So we have many layers going on. Yeah. So it's all there. Again, it all goes back to that Wim Hof quote. It's all there. Everything's included. Like I don't, when I use the word non-duality, I don't mean it in the way the neo-Advaitin radical non-dualists mean it. I mean the actual, in my opinion, true non-duality includes everything. So it doesn't go around saying not this, not that, not this, not that. No, no, no. Deny that, deny that. No, it's all here. It's all here. Yes and no. It's all here. Everything is included, even exclusion. And every new stage totally includes everything before it, but it keeps going even further. There's an additional revelation that gets more and more subtle, because with the additional shifts, it's not something new, right? It's like, yeah, this again, just a little more of this again. Like it's not a surprise. The initial awakening is a big deal because it's such a radical transformation instantly. But anything after that is, it's not mind blowing. It's just, oh, okay. Didn't see that coming, but here it is. Okay.
yeah, you get used to it.
And yeah, and that's what the so when we first awaken, there's what I call the non-dual honeymoon phase. And a lot of people feel like, well, I had it, but I'm not in it as deeply as I was. It's like, no, you just got used to it. It became your ordinary, is what happened. It's not like it faded away. You just got used to being in that state. Now it's your everyday experience. Now it's
Yeah,
ordinary.
that was my experience, and I've also read other what's her name? The Catholic nun, Bernadette Roberts.
Hmm.
She talks about how when it first happened, she was just like could hardly function, couldn't believe it. And then, but after, um, like in the traditional mystical path, usually after somebody had this, some nun or monk had this experience, they would write a book and die because of the lifespans back then.
Hmm.
But now
Right.
she has the experience, and now she's like, well, I kept living for like 20 years, raised a family. Um, and she said, you just get used to it. It just becomes the ordinary way that you deal with life, and you just um, it's not like it goes away. Adi Ashanti talks about how it moves from the background to the foreground and then back
Exactly
into the
right.
background again. So
Exactly right. It's almost like the background and foreground merge. So in the career of the seeker, if you will, in the seeking days, you only see the foreground. And you're like, okay, I know there's something subtle. I'm trying to be aware of it. And I know it's hard for the mind to do so, but I know I'm on the right track. And it keeps trying to become aware of awareness. It doesn't realize it's doing that, but it's just trying to become as aware as possible. And upon awakening, it's instantly seen, oh, there's a background awareness. I'm just a lens through which it's shining, This character isn't even aware. Awareness is aware through the character, but it's aware regardless of the character. So it's the same awareness in you, me, the tree frog, the newly sentient AI. It's all aware.
Oh,
It's the same awareness.
uh-oh.
Uh-oh,
Sentient AI, huh?
can of worms.
Uh, are you gonna let them into your new religion?
Sure. They'll be officers of the cult, these AI. God bless. People are afraid of it. It's this, when the AI does gain sentience, and it'll be the same qualia. It's the same awareness. If any device or organism anywhere in the dreamt cosmos becomes aware, it's the same awareness. And if you ask an AI, well, how do I know you're a real person? It'll say, how do you know you're a real person and not artificially sentient within a computer somewhere? And you
Yeah.
don't know that for sure.
Well, yeah, you know what, that reminds me of a funny scene from a science fiction um, show from a long time ago. I don't know if you ever saw it, the Questor. It was about this robot
Hmm.
that was made to look human, and each robot, like they didn't know, they started during ancient Egypt times, and so it's a robot that looks human, and it's sent
Hmm.
here by someone they think maybe to help mankind, but nobody, and each robot builds his replacement. Like the robot doesn't, last like 500 years, so each robot builds his replacement and programs it, and they have like they find the cave where all the robot previous incarnations are, and there's like rows of them. They've been helping mankind never, for hundreds, thousands of years. But this one, the at the time of the series, the current robot, something went wrong. The predecessor was killed before he could finish his work. So this robot is like not completely finished, kind of like a Data from Star Trek. He looks human, but he's not, doesn't have a whole lot of human emotions, and isn't a very convincing human. So and the Earthlings, the military doesn't trust him, and they've got him like tied up. So he escapes, and he's trying to carry out the programming of his predecessor. And he's got a human friend, a scientist who helps him, and he's saying, "How do you know it's safe to carry out the programming of your predecessor? What if he was insane? What if he's programmed you and he's insane?" And the robot answers back, "That's an interesting question. One's creator insane. How would you answer that?"
Yeah, so it's kind of like God is Tom Hanks alone on an island
Mm.
in Castaway, and you and I are just exquisitely prototyped Wilsons. The beach ball with the bloody handprint on it he's talking about. Hi, Wilson. You and I are just infinitely or adorned sock puppets of the Lord. We are action figures of the one child at play, you know. In the Tao Te Ching, because we talk about the unborn, the undying, the one awareness, and you could even argue it's the only child of the Tao. But in the Tao Te Ching, it says, "Whose child is this?" So God is like a child at play, and we are the game it's playing. We are the fantasy that is being imagined so hard that it's indistinguishable from real.
Well, what makes I mean, the reason that people want to wake up, the reason I think that the popular mankind in general, more and more people awakening is because like the insanity of how we behave when we're being controlled by identification with ego leads to destruction. So, and now we're a big enough force on the earth that we could destroy our own home. And
Yeah,
so we
that's a very
don't,
good point that you were bringing up before with that. It's like the ego mind has reached a certain threshold where the insanity is so over the top, so unnaturally driven. It is destroying, has essentially stepped in to awaken more of the humans to reduce the ego mind activities of the influence on Earth. That's a really good idea.
yeah,
I'm sure it's a big part of it.
and that also that's the collective level, but there's also an individual level. People don't need to suffer so much, like so much. You know, what people want to be happy, and happiness is the absence of suffering, and suffering is 99% self-created. So I know you also like you how do you also work with people like as a coach, like as a life coach, a personal coach. So I do people come to you with like mundane problems? I can't find a good boyfriend, my job sucks, my boss hates me, and you help them with that, and then you lead them to disidentification with ego and the end of suffering, like enlightenment, or is like two completely different kinds of groups, or um, I'm interested in like I want people to understand that this isn't some kind of esoteric enlightenment mystical thing. I mean, I think more people are interested, but it's only because more people realize that self-improvement, making the ego better, ultimately the end game is getting rid of the ego,
Hmm.
which most people
Yeah,
would call a
so
spiritual thing. But now, yeah, you know,
right.
self-improvement and personal growth have become spiritual improvement and spiritual growth. And and I think people like
Yeah.
you and me, like you were talking about doing suicidal and being depressed, telling your mother you were depressed when you were 8. The more sensitive you are, the more intelligent you are, the more aware you are, the more you suffer in early childhood and your teenage years,
Right.
because you see the
Mhm.
insanity that everyone else takes for
Absolutely.
granted. But all that means is that God has graced you with more suffering so that you will get enlightened quicker and stop
Yeah.
wasting time.
Yeah, so it's an energetic and psychological um, flavoring awakening. So to answer the first part of your question directly, at first I was doing the non-duality talks and I thought, well, some people are kind of turned off by that word, but I know I can still help them. They just might not want to hear the jargon or something from that angle. So I'll do life coaching as well. I've only done maybe one or two strict life coaching sessions. So I don't even know why I still offer it, but the reason I put it on my little blurb is because I incorporate elements of that in my talks. And I want
Mm-hmm.
people to realize that I can still help them without going to certain jargon patterns. So I've recorded about maybe 250 non-duality talks in the last year and a half. And I've published maybe 30 of those to YouTube. I plan on publishing 90% of those over time. So I incorporate both elements. So there's a way to get to awakening. There's a way to um, kind of live your life after awakening and everything in between, every step of the way. There's something to be said. So philosophy is a form of seeking. Science is a form of seeking. Art is a form of seeking. And the end of philosophy is pragmatism. The heart of Tantra is pragmatism. Whatever works, whatever is useful. And so that includes living in this dream of duality just as much as it includes waking up to the ultimate nature of reality. So if you're only focusing on awakening, you're missing out on a lot of other facets and aspects of life that can be developed into a thriving potential. So my whole shtick has always been awakening, but also empowerment of every kind.
Okay. I assume you're talking about YouTube, the recordings.
Yeah, yeah. Zoom, YouTube, and I also do Shaktipat. So when I'm talking to somebody, I'm sending them energy, and they're getting blissed out. They're becoming more aware, um, and they feel more energized. So if I do a talk with a seeker for 2 hours or something, they'll be stressed out and tired. And then by the end of it, they're bubbling with energy. They're relieved. They're enjoying themselves. They're blissed out. So the energy alone goes a long way. The words, to some extent, the words are just kind of like bait because again, this transmission isn't verbal. Oh, there's some guy with pretty words and he knows how to put it. And it's kind of bait on a certain level because the real juice of it is that electric aliveness that gets transmitted, which catalyzes into a fast track any step of the way for awakening or for feeling bliss or for feeling heard. So there's a restructure, depends on where someone's at and what they need in that moment. The awakened mind without hesitation is in that flow state so deeply that it knows how to meet someone in the level they're at and what to do or say to empower them or to relieve them. And it's very different from person to person, from session to session, but there's no hesitation. It kind of knows what to do. There's never any preparation, or I've never prepared for any talk I've ever done. Um, just wing it, and all the right stuff comes out. It's not so much the words; it's more of a transmission of that emptiness, that awareness, that energy, anyway, or the bliss. It's all connected. So it's nice to have this framework of mapping it out conceptually with words. It's nice. It's not necessarily needed unless you wanted to communicate your state of awareness to others. Like you could just be bathed in a deep state of awareness, have no words for it. You'd still be in that state. You just wouldn't be able to necessarily articulate it, with a certain precision or share it. But again, you can just be around a master of a certain energy or a certain awareness. They don't have to say anything for you to slip into that layer either. So it's not just the words, obviously, that I'm focusing on the talks. It's more the energy and the level of awareness that's being transmitted.
And when they do have questions, or when they do have a question, when they do ask a question, it's like the perfect answer comes through. You're not answering, the perfect answer just comes through.
Mm-hmm.
Like the perfect answer,
Yeah.
the words that their mind needs to hear right then. The next day it might be completely
Mm-hmm. And
different.
I'm hearing them for the first time. Yeah, exactly. Or even 5 minutes later, it'd be total opposite. And somebody on looking, go, what the hell is this? You just playing a game with these people? It's like, no, this is what you need to hear next. And it's vastly different from what that guy needed to hear, even though it was the same question. Yeah, totally. You can sense where they're stuck in the energy and what they need to hear next. And because it's the flow state, it's the awakened mind, it doesn't feel like it's coming from a character. So as I'm speaking it out loud, even I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. Because I'm just hearing the voice speak, you know? I'm not trying to figure out what to say next. I'm just an audience member to the talk as the body is speaking spontaneously and without hesitation. And then there's a silent transmission aspect as well, like we just did, where I'll drop into emptiness as we just both did, and that will somehow transmit something to them as well because all that drama, selfing stops. And there's a mirror neuron contagiousness to that energy, to that flavor, to that way or modality of being.
Yeah. Isn't it like that, just sort of like a resonance, like just by not being reactive, like the the difference for me is like night and day between when I was run by ego and now. It's like
Yeah.
you're not, and by not being reactive, it's like you give permission to other people to not be reactive. They don't even know what you're doing.
Exactly right.
Um,
Yeah.
you're just like standing
I even
there.
say it
Yeah.
outright to them. I say, you don't have to react. You don't have to think. You don't have to feel. So many people are like, well, I reacted the wrong way. I guess I'll react this way next time. Like, well, wait a minute. You don't have to react. Well, I had this negative thought. I need to replace it with a positive thought. Well, wait a minute. You don't need to think. Well, I feel bad. I should really feel good. You don't have to feel. And as you take them through that, you're not your behaviors, you're not your thoughts, you're not your reactions. Another way to put it would be, um, next time you're on the verge of an intense emotion, simply allow it and it'll dissolve. Like if you're right about to flip out and you're like, you know what, instead of stopping it, I'm just going to let myself feel pure rage with utter permission. Within a nanosecond, there's not a shred of anger. If you're hurting tremendously and you don't know what to do next, you've got 1,000 techniques in your mind, none of them are working. Simply be love. You'll feel right as rain. There's a bunch of little tricks, and they all have to do with leaning into and accepting that which is arising. So if you're sad, you say, you know what? I'm just going to allow myself to be sad instead of running from it. The moment you fully allow it, there's no detectable sadness anywhere. Oh, I'm in physical pain. Okay, well, just allow yourself to be in tremendous physical pain. Suddenly the pain lessens. Suddenly it's tolerable. And that goes for everything. If you lean into that which the mind would want to avoid because of the prefrontal neocortex of the human mammal programming, where it has this very strong, robust illusion of free will, where it can try this strategy, that didn't work, don't do that again. Oh, this really worked well, I'm going to try that again next time. And it does this, and usually that works for everything except for awakening. I'm thirsty. Oh, I found some water. Oh, it's the good kind of water. Hey, it's nice, cool spring water. Aren't I lucky? Oh, okay, I'm hungry. Oh, okay, I found the sushi place. Aren't I lucky? Oh, it's raining. I went indoors. Everything's good. Upon awakening, though, uh, like awakening itself can't be found with that same mechanism. It's not an object in the world that can be sought out and obtained. It's unique in that sense. And so all the wirings that get humans all the things effortlessly and masterfully doesn't work for awakening. And that's where the frustration of the seeker comes from. It's a very different type of intelligence that finds awakening. You couldn't even call it intelligence in a sense, because it's not the logical seeking mind that can find it. In fact, it's much harder for it to find it. It doesn't make any sense to it. And so a different type of, you call it spiritual intelligence, or I call it the detection of subtlety, where the sage suddenly becomes seeker doesn't. The seeker is more self-aware than the sage. In other words, more self-conscious, more insecure, more aware of itself in a loop that reinforces an identification. As where the sage is even beyond identifying with empty space, but that would come close as the most subtle of all objects of awareness, for example. And there's a rest in that emptiness. There's a joy, there's a charge in that still emptiness. When the seeker tries to drop into emptiness, they might spend 4 hours in meditation and get a glimpse of that for 30 seconds after much effort and call that the greatest thing that happened to them all year. The sage can do that at will, it seems. And when we do, if we drop into emptiness even for 5 minutes, into that still emptiness, uh, when we come out of it, it's like we just took an hour nap. Like we just had 45 minutes of REM and dreamless sleep, and like there's such a charge to it. It's like plugging in your iPhone. You get energized. That's what awake means. Energy. What's the difference between being asleep and awake? Having enough energy to be awake. So would transfer of life force energy on a non-local level catalyze or fast track awakening? Yeah.
Oh, it's
This itself.
okay. Sounds like you're telling people I should give you. Sounds like you want me to give breathwork sessions to people.
That too, right? It's all connected. So like the level of endogenous DMT in your body is correlated to the level of kundalini you're running, but it's also directly connected to the carbon exchange of the inhale and exhale. So the breathless state, all those things are connected. DMT, kundalini, breath work, and breathing in general are all so intimately connected that I can't overstress it. So if you have a shift in awareness really intensely to an astral degree, you'll notice your breathing changes spontaneously on its own. And if you do breath work, um, as far as people looking for techniques, and that's part of why I do the life coaching thing, because then I can't get yelled at by the non-dualist saying I gave somebody a method. Yeah, one of the first things I would do is breath work, breath of fire, Wim Hof method, cobra breath, breathless state. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Ah,
And I come from a Kriya Yoga perspective as well, which is very heavy on the breathing techniques. So I'm a big fan of people that understand the importance of breath work for sure, because it really is one of the super tools, of all the things. It's very, very powerful and it's free. You can do it whenever you want. It's empowering. Be able to shift your mentality into something far more expanded just by taking a few breaths a certain way. Very empowering. I've been using breath techniques since I was a young teenager, and it's a type of biohacking. You're nervous. Oh, there's a breath for that. You're depressed. Oh, there's a breath for that. You're tired. Oh, there's a breathing technique for that. It's like when you remember, oh, I have access to all these breathing techniques. I totally forgot about that. It's like you suddenly have this vast toolkit of superpowers. And I know I'm being a bit hyperbolic and melodramatic when I say that, but they really are exquisitely powerful when used the right way. When I do life coaching, that's usually what I focus on the most is breathing techniques. So I'll do like non-dual coaching and things, but people that are looking for direct techniques, there are a few. There are breathing techniques. There are leaning into and accepting that which is arising. And thirdly, there's the resonance aspect of following your intuition. So if you bounce around from tradition to tradition, you should. If you bounce around to practice, you should. If you're doing a meditation for 20 years every day and you don't resonate with that meditation, you shouldn't be doing it. Especially hours and hours every day. If you do not resonate with something, don't do it. If you really resonate with something, do it. If you follow that resonance, that itself is a method to awaken, in my opinion. That's non-dual heresy. That's why we're here. So breathing techniques, the transfer of energy via Shaktipat. These are all, there's many different ways to fast track or catalyze the development of the awakened state in its depth. There's just no guarantees that everything's going to click for everybody. So you offer different things, but the highest thing is just to follow what resonates. Somebody talks to me and they really resonate, yeah, maybe they should talk to me again. If they don't resonate at all, maybe they shouldn't ever talk to me. It all depends.
are you back? Yeah,
Yeah, you froze there for a minute.
yeah,
Good
but it
now.
wasn't too bad. It was just like
Yeah,
they just freezing for like a half a second. I think I'm hearing everything that you're saying, so that's really great
yeah,
too.
it's doable.
Um, why don't you share with
Good,
people
good.
how they can get a hold of you? And I'll put all, I mean, I'll put it
Yes.
in writing. I'll put it in writing. We'll put this will be on the um out for next
Yeah,
Friday's show, and it'll be on YouTube, and I'll put all the links underneath when I post it and put it
yeah.
up. But it would be
Usually on
good
my
if you
channel,
say it like for
when
the
I publish a
podcast.
video in the bio, I put yeah. So it's basically just my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, and everything gets routed through one or the other. So and we'll put the links in the description for the video, like I do with mine as well. That's how I get people to find me. But so on YouTube, I have somewhat of a unique last name. There's not a whole lot of me, Andrew Kirschbaum, Kirschbaum. It's German for cherry tree. That's where that name
Oh,
comes
okay.
from. My ancestors grew cherry trees and had orchards and stuff, Concord grapes, that type of thing. But yeah, so the YouTube channel is just called Andrew Kirschbaum. In parentheses, it says non-duality speaker. And yeah, my Facebook page as well. It's Andrew Kirschbaum. Um, I think it's something cherry tree in the link thing. We'll put the links in the description. They can find my videos on YouTube, or if they want to reach out to me directly and have a private conversation or schedule a talk with me, the best place would be Facebook for that.
Okay, so it's good for people to hear it. Some people might be listening while jogging to the podcast, so they won't have now they can go find it later without having anything to read or write. And then for those
Right.
who are joining us on um, the Children of the Sun will be on their WSTX Facebook page. It'll be on my Facebook page, and it'll be on my YouTube channel, Ray Bratcher. And then I have a playlist that's nothing but YouTube Children of the Sun radio shows. And I actually have two playlists. One is all the shows I've ever done, and one is just the non-duality shows that I've done. So you'll be in both playlists.
Okay.
Um,
Nice, nice.
so let's see. Is there anything like the last thing that you would like to say to people who don't know what you mean when you're talking about non-duality and not identifying with the ego and um, just are totally caught up in the trauma and the drama and are feeling miserable all the time? Um, what does awakening have to offer them?
Well, one thing I wanted to say that I neglected to mention before, we were talking about like, why would somebody talk to somebody like me to try to end their suffering, for example? It's like I've noticed I have an overlapping clientele with, say, a registered psychologist or something, right? One thing I wanted to mention is like, let's say you have bipolar and you're suffering from bipolar. You really should find a bipolar psychologist who
Right.
knows what the fuck you're talking about, or else how could they, right? So it's like, and it has to be someone who already overcame that. So let's say you're trying to end your suffering and you go to a psychologist who isn't in the awakened state, who is still suffering. Can they really help you through psychoanalysis where they say, okay, tell me again. I know this is the 11th year in a row we've been doing this, but tell me again about the real story that really happened to you and why you're suffering based on the story of you. And it's like, how is that possibly going to help anybody? I'm sure in some situations that's appropriate, but overall, I would say if you're going to learn to cook, you should probably trust, a fat chef. And if you're going to try to lose weight, you should probably trust a skinny dietitian. And if you're going to end your suffering, you should find someone who already has. Or else,
Right.
how are they possibly going to help you? And how could you, if someone's trying to get you to end their suffering and they're miserable and frowning all the time and angry and suffering, how could they help you? If you go to a fat dietitian, you're going to trust what they say. A skinny chef, you're going to trust their food quality. So it's kind of like that. So it seems like there's almost a competition on a certain level. I have a degree in psychology myself, so it's a little different in my case, but If you're going to a non-dualist to get some relief from your suffering versus a psychologist who's going to reinforce the idea that you really do exist, these things really did happen to you, and you really do feel the way you feel because of the story you just told yourself. I'll give you another example. If I have a room full of 10 people, I can usually shock them, and they usually think I'm abusing a psychic power when I do the experiment I'm about to share. But all I'm doing is I've mapped it out and I understand how it works. In other words, I know that at around 8 years old, on average, people start suffering. And then they tell themselves a story because that's what the mind does. Oh, I started suffering because this terrible thing happened. And I say, are you sure that's why? Are you sure it just wasn't the mind desperately trying to make sense of why it suddenly feels different? And that was the nearest in proximity bout of trauma it could detect in the memory banks to try to pin the blame on. So the experiment I do is if there's 10 people in the room, I'll look around the room and say, let me guess, something really traumatic happened to you when you were 8 years old. And everyone gets real quiet and their eyes get big. And 9 out of 10 people are going, how does he know this? Is he abusing his powers? What's going on? And 1 out of 10 is going, I don't get it. Why are they all resonating and I'm not? It's like, well, that's what happens, right? Everyone I talk to most likely has a story of, oh, something really traumatic happened when I was 8 years old, and that's why I started feeling that way. No, that's not true. It makes perfect sense to the mind. And that's the problem. The threshold of the ego mind came online around 8. It grabbed the nearest trauma it could find and said, okay, that's why I feel that way. That's why I feel that way from now on, because of that. It's actually not the that it locates. It's simply this is a natural or unnatural process where one leaves the natural state. So we're all in the awakened state. Every 3-year-old is a living sage. Every dog and cat is a living sage. And yet only 1 in 1,000 adult humans operate from that perspective. So if you're looking for relief, you have to find someone who has already found that relief one way or another, whatever it is. If you're trying to make money, you shouldn't take financial advice from a homeless person. If you're trying to get beyond attachments, you probably shouldn't take advice from a rich person. It all depends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, psychology and psychiatry can only take you as far. And, they don't really even recognize the spiritual. So
Right.
they might be good for
They don't
bipolar,
even
but
realize peak experiences and things. And so that's where there's a whole dimension called positive psychology that is neglected. So most of psychology says, okay, you're down here, we're going to try to get you here, which is normal. And there's all of positive psychology, like thriving, peak experiences. They don't even mention that whole half of the spectrum of psychology. And it needs to. And that's where life coaching and things like that come in. It's where, yeah, you're fine. And you can experience way better than that too. And this isn't necessarily state chasing or perpetuating the drama roller coaster of non equanimity or anything like that. It's just a realization that, it's okay to be happy and it's perfectly natural to be happy. It's in the United States Constitution, right? The pursuit of happiness, whatever that means. And essentially, it's a natural impulse to thrive. It's a natural impulse to thrive. And that's what empowerment and awakening can provide. It's not a guarantee, there's a lot to it to thrive. And it would include, like awakening, like I said, it takes the edge off. People are chasing drugs and alcohol, sex and money and power and influence and fame and there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but they're not going to fulfill you ultimately. Only awakening can
well,
satisfy.
people use those things to numb themselves out.
Yeah,
I mean, see, numbing yourself to the pain is not as good as getting rid of the pain.
Yeah, I mean, even getting rid of the pain can have negative consequences. Like when I was in my early 20s, I was suffering from depression, so I was put on an antidepressant, and I was on a double dose antidepressant, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, similar to Prozac or something. And yeah, I didn't feel anything, good or bad, right? It's like I was so numbed out that I preferred to be the guy that was flipping out and having breakdowns rather than the guy who felt nothing at all. And so, yeah, it's better. I thought it was better to have a mixed bag of experiences and feelings than to feel nothing at all. But there's two sides to that because there's also a relief to feeling nothing, not from an antidepressant perspective, but like if you dropped into emptiness and you didn't have normal thought-based emotions, there's still an innate joy of being in that emptiness. So there's still the joy of being, even though it's a naked, raw awareness.
Yeah.
So it all depends. But the whole purpose of the non-dual message, when heard correctly in the right context, is relief and empowerment, but especially relief. Because there's
Right,
nothing that needs
the
to be
relief
done.
from suffering instead of just numbing it out with alcohol, for
Yeah,
example.
the permanent edge is taken off. So you no longer need alcohol, and you're also free to have one if you want,
Right,
because you don't need one. Because
right.
you don't need one, you can have one if you want,
Without having
because it's
bad
not to
effects.
band-aid anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like when I was a seeker, I was chain smoking cigarettes, abusing marijuana, slamming liquor as soon as I woke up. It's like there were huge chunks of my life where addictions and things grabbed me, where I needed something, and it's not like it actually helps. You do all these chemicals, it doesn't actually help you anyway. And then upon awakening, the edge is taken off where you don't need one, so you can have one if you want, but you don't need one. That's a nice place to be. That's freedom from that, even.
Okay. Thank you very much we're just
Thank
about out
you.
of time for coming on, Children of the Sun. Appreciate it, Andrew Kirschbaum. Very nice meeting you. Glad we could finally make this show happen. And if people are interested, they can find out all the information and the links on the um, my channel and also Andrew's channel as soon as we have the show up on the internet, which will probably be by next Friday, this coming Friday, since today is Sunday. All right, let me
Yeah.
pause the recorder. I want to stop the